So yesterday I was down in Tucson, and I was attending a class with Aaron Wilson, Shanna Ackles.
Sweet.
And it was a financial building class. And they played a clip of Dave Ramsey talking about compound interest. And in the example, Dave Ramsey's talking about how this guy, as an example, this young kid, 19 years old, starts putting $2,000 into a savings account, and he does this for 8 years, a total of $16,000 invested, and he just lets it sit.
Right.
And he wants to talk about the impacts of compound interest. And so when this 19-year-old starts investing this money, he obviously starts earning interest. He leaves it in the account. Now he's earning interest on principal plus interest. And this just happens over and over. That's the idea of compounding. For a total investment of $16,000, when this individual turns, is it 59 and a half or 65, whatever the age is.
Yeah, right.
He's got a total of about $2.2 million. Now, in contrast, if you were to start that process at age 27, in this example that Dave Ramsey used, the guy ends up putting in the second example, he ends up putting a total of $78,000 compared to the first guy with only 16 grand. And at age 65, he's only at $1.5 million. So the guy, just to summarize all that, option one, starting at age 19, investing a total of $16,000, and by age 65 having $2.2 million, or starting at age 27, investing a total of $78,000 to then only have $1.5 million at age 65. So we can see how time, in and of itself, is in your favor when you start sooner rather than later.
Yeah, definitely. Holy smokes.
This is just the beginning, David. Because here's what I want our listeners to hear. This works in any type of investment. So let's say it's a secure investment like a certificate of deposit or a very stable mutual fund. There's a variety of different investments we can make. And what would you say is a reasonable return on an investment this day and age? What would you be happy to get on your money?
Oh, well, I mean, like safe or, I mean, the bank, you're going to be lucky if you get 1% on anything.
Right.
I mean, so I think most people would be happy to get 4, 5, 6%.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Here's what I want our listeners to really see. Compounding interest works no matter what the investment strategy is, but let's take a specific look at real estate and see how exciting these numbers truly become. Because if I take $100,000 and I invest it into a account and I earn an 8% return, most people would say 8% per year is pretty good.
Yeah, definitely.
At the end of 1 year, it cost me $100,000 to earn $8,000. I now have an 8% return. So far, so good, right?
I'm following you, and I'm not a mathematician, so
it's not too complicated yet. Now, let's say I took that same $100,000, and rather than putting it into an account, I bought a piece of real estate. Let's call that a 25% down payment on a $400,000 purchase. The average appreciation of real estate is 4% per year. Now, obviously, in some markets, it's much higher, especially in our market right now. I know here in Scottsdale, we're experiencing 8, 10, 12% appreciation.
Third.
But let's say conservatively 4% appreciation. I buy a $400,000 asset for that same $100,000. What I want our listeners to hear is you're not earning 4% on $100,000. You're earning 4% on $400,000. So by the end of that 1 year, you've turned it into $16,000 of theoretical appreciation, right? It's unrealized at this point until you sell the property, of course. But over time, that continues to compound.
Yeah.
And so for the same amount of money, I've earned twice as much upside. And even if you don't have $100,000, let's say you only had $25,000. I can still go buy that $100,000 asset and earn appreciation. And now the amount of money that I've had to put up to stake is reduced, and I'm still earning the appreciation on the entire asset.
Right. Your cash on cash is actually much higher than what you're even talking about. So, okay, we dove right into this conversation, and I love it because we're talking about finances, and we're talking about things that, honestly, I don't think a lot of real estate agents give much thought to, because often we've been there too, we're chasing that next commission check, right? And so I just want to ask you a little bit, like, your mind is clearly blown by like thinking through this. And I know that you've been exposed to it and you've learned it and you've lived it. several times, and you're still like, compound interest is that exciting.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because when you watch Dave Ramsey's video, if you haven't seen it, just Google or YouTube, Dave Ramsey compound interest. In a 4-minute clip, you will get excited about compound interest too. And again, the takeaway for our listeners is that works with any type of long-term investment. The beauty of real estate is you're earning the compound interest on the entire asset, not on how much capital it took you to acquire it. So the example I gave you, David, was a 25% down. What if I bought a $400,000 house for only 10% down? Now I'm only 40 grand in and still earning $16,000 in appreciation for only one-fourth the amount. What if I have an FHA loan and I only have to put down 3.5% on a $400,000 asset? What if I have a VA loan and I put down 0 on a $400,000 asset? Compounding interest still applies. I'm wondering why more real estate agents aren't personally buying more assets, and I'm wondering why more real estate agents aren't talking to the people that they care about do they understand how to make their money work for them?
I think one of the graphics that I see thrown around all the time, and I bet our listeners have seen this too, is the average net worth of a renter is something like, $20,000 or something, right? And the average net worth of a homeowner is around $240,000. I think that's what statistics say, right? And I see that graphic thrown around, and I sometimes wonder if real estate agents actually know what that means,
right?
And why that's the case. That's the case because of exactly what you're talking about. It's taking that small amount of money down, putting it into that asset, and then experiencing that asset's appreciation. And we're only talking about one benefit of real estate.
This is one we're just
benefit.
Talking about appreciation right now. We're not talking about the tax advantages. We're not talking about the cash flow if it's a rental right? There's all these other considerations to your point.
Exactly. So, okay. But before we get too far, like I want to talk a little bit about the time element that you were mentioning, because in the first example you said the kid was like 19 years old?
19 to 27, so 8 years total. He invested $2,000 per year for a total of $16,000 all-in investment.
And what I think is extremely important is, I don't care if you're 16 or 19 or 20, like, now is the time to think about your future, because you can't catch up on those years. Mm-hmm. You really can't. And I know that we have listeners in our audience that are still very, very young, high school, college, and now is the time to start putting your money into assets that appreciate, assets that just have compound interest, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. And I can't recall right now who said it. Somebody much wiser than myself. Said that, broke people, they specialize in understanding depreciating assets, vehicles, clothes, cars, etc. Wealthy people specialize in understanding assets that appreciate. And to me, real estate is the one that just screams, come buy me up and hold me for a long time, and the real estate will do the work. And it's exciting to me, no matter what age you are, it's never too late to start investing in real estate and to start teaching the people around you, friends, family, other agents, your children, about the benefits of what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, definitely. That's super cool. Dave Ramsey is someone that's very polarizing for a lot of reasons. And, I know I don't agree with everything that he says financially. And yet in these aspects, I think he's just absolutely brilliant. Compound interest. Okay, I'm going to move the conversation away from the money aspect of kind of the compound effect, if you will.
Sure.
Because I think what we're seeing is it's time that really compounds the initial principal deposit of whatever we're talking about.
Right.
So let's also talk about, someone might be ready to turn this off because they're like, well, I have no money to invest whatsoever. I need to just find that next commission check. Well, I want to apply this to your business as well. We've said before, there's a compound effect to the time element that you put into your business. Time on task over time yields bigger and better results, right? And so I've just, even while you were talking about the 19-year-old versus the 27-year-old, I was thinking about, now is the time in your business to be making those deposits every single day, even if they seem small, those small action deposits, because over time, it's going to yield massive, massive result. And so, I don't know, I was just thinking about the compound effect just in our actions and in our business.
I totally agree, and I want to give Aaron Wilson credit, founder of Team Integrity in Tucson.
He was one of our guests early on.
He was indeed. Incredible individual, incredible business owner, somebody I respect and admire a lot. And he was talking about exactly what you're saying, is start taking a little piece. And his suggestion was make it a percentage. Because we're in real estate, we have some good months, we have some not so great months. So rather than making it a dollar amount and putting yourself into a struggle on a slower month, make it a percentage so it maintains consistency. What percentage of every check are you going to put into an investment account? What percentage of your total monthly revenue are you going to set aside for your savings, for your emergency fund, and then for those investments? And once you fill up those emergency funds and the operating expense accounts, and they're at where they need to be, then every other dollar you could choose to invest or do whatever you want to do with. And so I liked his perspective around make it a percentage, not a specific dollar amount, because no matter if you have a good month or bad month, you can always allocate 5%.
Yeah, definitely. I took some of our agent leaders, our top agents in the brokerage last year through a book and through a process called Profit First. Have you read Profit First? So Profit First, if you haven't read it, you need to pick it up because it's fantastic. Actually, one of our guests, Haro, I think, recommended Profit First to you guys earlier on, and I took some of these agents through it who are really experienced, and we would say, I mean, they're top agents. They're really great. One of the big principles of that book is allocating your money into different accounts based on percentage so that you make sure you have a profit resulting in your business, right? And I just love the strategy. Dave Ramsey teaches something similar, the envelope system. I love the strategy of putting your money into buckets. And one of the really practical ways that I live this out in my own rental portfolio is using Ally Bank. It's an online bank that has built-in buckets. And you can actually designate how much is going into every single bucket. And so if you're out there and you're thinking about, okay, how do I divide up my money? How do I budget it? How do I do what Joe is saying and, take 10% of every check? You need to check out a bank resource like Ally and actually set up these buckets because it makes life beautiful.
It does. And not to mention, you now don't have to have so much discipline, right? And one of the things, one of the traps I ran into was I just left all my money on one account. So now when I'm at the store or out having a good time, what's $20? What's $50 when I know I've got X amount sitting in this account? Whereas if I took that money and allocated it into the appropriate accounts based on percentage to what you're saying, David, that account doesn't appear to be so big. So now I'm asking the question, do I really want to spend this money? Oh. And so it's one of those things that I had to go through the hard way, and it really makes a difference. And back to your point about the Ally Bank, again, I credit Aaron Wilson. I was in a class with him yesterday, so he's very top of mind right now.
And you guys, Aaron did not pay us for all this free publicity.
He talked about on your long-term savings account or on this compound interest account, intentionally set it up to make it very difficult to access it. Choose a bank that's not even in your city or state. Choose a bank that doesn't make it so easy for you to go online and transfer your money back into your operating account. Make it a challenge because that's going to force you to really think about, do I really want to drive 2 hours to go get do I really need the money that badly?
I could not agree more. And in fact, I was going to, you credited Aaron. I could have got credit
for that.
Was that your idea? Dang it. No, same thing. I was going to say a money principle that I have learned over time and I'm still trying to get better at is I want my money as far away from me as possible because to your point, like it eliminates the possibility that I can be impulsive with it. And so online banks, cutting up the debit cards, not ordering checks. Those are all strategies that I employ just because I know that when money is close, it's easier to spend. Put it far out of reach.
Yeah, absolutely. And he, we talked about this graphic yesterday. You only have 4 options with your money. You're either going to save it, you're going to spend it, you're going to donate it, or you're going to invest it. So based on the conversation we're having, obviously donate whatever amount of money, whatever percentage of money makes sense for you and what you're passionate about doing. As far as savings, we kind of talked about that. Allocate your funds based on how much you need for example, 6 months of operation of your business, 6 months of personal expenses, maybe an emergency fund if your car breaks down, whatever. Have those things set up. From there, you can either choose to spend the remainder or invest it. And the whole idea, obviously, of investing it is that that's going to create a return, cash flow, that you can then continue to invest. And so once you get this domino toppling over, it just builds and builds and builds.
Yeah. This conversation is so good because the reality is the majority of small business owners aren't good with money.
Right.
The majority of Americans aren't good with money.
Yeah.
Like, let's be honest, the majority of us oftentimes aren't good with money. And what I love about this is, even here at the brokerage, we've taken an intentional approach to teaching people about money. And so if you're a real estate professional out there, like, you need to seek out, like, Financial Peace University offered by Dave Ramsey. Go find a class offered at your local college about personal finance, because those things are going to have direct benefit to your business. And I could not be happier that we're having a conversation around finances. We should probably have like a series or something about this.
Yeah, for sure. And, this conversation reminds me of Ben Kinney, because he did his wealth series. And for those listening, we're still trying to get Ben on the podcast. And we would love to have him as one of our guests. Kidding, Ben, we love you and we get so much inspiration. And one of the things he talks about is seeking financial literacy, and how he had to be very intentional about learning about money. And to your point, David, sometimes we get so consumed by rocking and rolling in real estate, we forget to look up and say, am I also simultaneously thinking as a business owner? Am I seeking the information and the resources I need to take my existing capital and make it work for me? Is my money creating more money overnight and every day and week and month and year that I'm alive, or is it losing value? Because as we know, when money sits in the bank, we're getting a 0.0001% return in a savings account. You might be able to put it in a bearing interest account, but think about inflation. I think inflation is something like 1.5% to 2.2% a year.
Yeah.
So even if you're getting a 3 or 4% return, you're really only getting 1 or 2% on your money.
Right.
So obviously, depending on where you're at in life and your risk tolerance, I'm not telling you to go out there and be risky or do anything that you shouldn't do. I'm just saying, seek the resources, seek the knowledge, and be an intentional investor with your money so that you can keep it working for you instead of fizzling out on the back end.
Yeah, definitely. While you were talking about that, it reminded me of something Rob Chavez, who we had on the podcast a few episodes ago, started asking his network. He started intentionally, I think it's like weekly, asking his network, what are you going to do to increase your passive income this week? And it was really neat to follow the thread, because it was people thinking about, how do I make money, the way you put it, overnight? Like, I'll tell you this, my wife owns a business and she sells a product, and I will tell you, there is nothing more beautiful than waking up to notifications of deposits.
Right.
Because people in Singapore and Philippines and China were ordering overnight while we were sleeping, right? Like that is cool. And when you start thinking like that, like, what do you have that's valuable that you can put out into the universe and increase your passive income? What type of money do you have so that you can go invest in assets that appreciate? Man, that's really where you start making legacy change, life change.
Yeah. And so I want to just kind of throw out a couple of action items for the listeners, because as always, go take this information and take action. So if you're at the very beginning and you're listening to all this and you're feeling a little overwhelmed, start by seeking the knowledge. Go find a book, go find an Audible or a podcast or a YouTube video, and just start consuming the information. If you're a little bit further along, maybe the next step for you is to go strategically set up your bank accounts. And me personally, I like to use a whiteboard and marker, David, and I like to visualize where is my money going. Yep. Because if you don't choose where your money goes, it's just going to start disappearing. So take out a whiteboard, take out a pen and paper, and start visualizing, what does my account structure need to look like so that I can strategically put certain percentages of money into the right funds. If you're already doing that, start thinking about, what are the assets that I want to be investing in? I'm not just pitching real estate, although I think I've demonstrated how the effective compound interest can multiply through investing in real estate. But to your point, what other businesses do you want to invest in? What other products do you want to put out there? where else do you want to spend your time and money to create this effort? So I guess the point is, regardless of where you're at in your journey, there's something you can go do today to learn something new, to structure your business better, and to be more intentional about where you're putting your money.
Definitely. Those are great. I'd add a fourth, and that would be that you track your net worth.
Oh.
Get really, get in the habit of putting all of your, if it's a whiteboard or a piece of paper or your iPhone, put all your assets and all your liabilities on a piece of paper, add those assets together, subtract the liabilities, and that becomes your net worth. And I think it's really important to have a high level overview of where your net worth sits every single day. Even it might be negative, it might be zero. That's okay. What you want to see is just an incremental growth in that net worth. Couple of resources, since we usually round out the show with some resources too. You said action step 1, go seek the knowledge. A book that comes to mind on really basic, budgeting that was really helpful to me in my early 20s was the book Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. In it, he talks about the envelope system, and it's a very manual approach to budgeting and handling your money, but it at least gets money in your hand and gets the senses involved and really helps you start thinking about it differently. Structuring your business, we mentioned Profit First, Mike Michalowicz, and we'll link all these up in the show notes. And then 3, your third action item was basically find the assets. I'm going to actually recommend another podcast called the Side Hustle Podcast because what it does is I think it broadens your horizons on how many different ways you can go out and make additional money. And when we talk about growing your net worth and investing in assets and compound interest, there's 2 ways that we can grow our wealth. It's by decreasing our expenses, or it's by making more income.
Right.
And I think any wealthy person is going to tell you if you put more energy into increasing your income, you're going to end up better than if you try to take the approach of, well, I'm going to cut my $1.50 cup of coffee out so I can save $5 a week. Is there benefit to that? And could that be where you need to start? Sure. But there comes a point where you have to think more about growing your income than simply decreasing the lifestyle expenses that you have.
I totally agree with that statement. And what I remind myself of is as my income grows over the span of my life, I need to live within the same means and not let myself mentally say, well, I'm earning more money so I can live more lavishly now.
The old lifestyle
it's
creep.
Totally unnecessary, right? The whole keeping up with the Joneses concept.
Yeah.
And so that's, some people are already doing a great job at that. Some people could probably throttle back a little bit, back to your point. Yeah. And again, and when you set up these accounts with percentages, you gain the visibility of where you're really wasting money and where you can really add additional income.
There's a real psychology to money, and I love talking about it because it's really where the rubber meets the road in our businesses. So I definitely think we should do more of this. Yeah.
We'll have to have a really prominent guest on to talk about this next time.
Sounds awesome. Well, sir, that was a great episode.
Bring us home.
All right. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of the All In Real Estate Podcast. As always, go play all in.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode of the All In Podcast. We want to invite you to find all of today's resources from our show page at aipodcast.co. We also ask that you take just 1 minute to leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. This is how we grow and how we're able to bring you the best content each and every week. Now go play all in.